Sorry, touched the wrong button on my camera there. You're not seeing this dog. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. Yeah, he's relaxing. That's Finn. Spells his name P-H-I-N-N. He's a rescue dog. Yeah, the field of vision only shows you what's within the camera frame. And so that's one of the limitations. Unlike our eyesight, right? We can look around 360 degrees all the time, and an owl can turn its head completely around. Imagine that field of vision. But it's a limitation in video framing. Another limitation is sharpness. When we buy a phone, we're always trying to figure out, wow, am I getting more megapixels? When I'm taking photographs, how many megapixels, if you're interested in photography at all? What are we trying to do there? What we're trying to do is approximate human eyesight. We're trying to get as close as we can to the sharpness with which human eyesight is capable of. And you'll never get there completely. Cameras will always have a limitation. That's why announcers, that's why talent wear makeup. They wear makeup because the sharpness is not there. The level of sharpness, however good it is in the digital age, is not there as it is in real life. So we have to make their features stand out more because the camera does not see as well as the human eye does. Next up is dimensions. Another limitation to television is it's only two dimensions. The camera has one eye, and that's why it can only capture two dimensions. Those two dimensions are height, right, and width. It cannot capture this dimension, depth. That can only be captured if you have two eyes. And so what you have to do in television production and video production is you have to create an illusion, the illusion of that third dimension. We do that in a few ways. I'm going to mention one later in the show, but the way I want to mention right now is through lighting. That's why we have 3-point lighting. The lighting in my little studio here is arranged to try and give me some depth so that you can see that my ears here are further back from my chin. Now, you're not actually seeing that. You're seeing a representation of that is improved by the lighting. And so lighting is a technique that we can overcome those two dimensions in television. And lastly is a limitation of the depth of field. Depth of field refers to focus. Many of you will have taken DMET 210, TV Studio Production 1. I recommend that class in which a lot of this information is going to be talked about. And in that class, you certainly will study how to focus a camera. You have to zoom in and focus on an item in the camera, but that means when you zoom back out, if that person that you just focused on moves and they change their distance from the camera, you got to do the focus over again in some cases because the focus is for a particular depth of field. So that's another limitation of cameras. Now let's move on to how you are framed. How you are framed today increasingly is less done by human beings operating cameras, although you still find plenty of that, not just in news programs, but live TV studio audiences. You need people operating cameras for the most part. And sitcoms and other things that are shot in front of live audiences, those are also using people to operate the cameras. But it's a fact that in the news, the area of news today, you have a lot more mobile cameras. These are where people are both the reporter and they're the videographer. Videographer is a term that's used to describe them. And that means that they're both shooting the camera and they're also doing the report. So they're setting up their camera on their tripod and then they're organizing a report. One moment, please. Yeah, I had a runny nose there. No, not the coronavirus. I had a runny nose there that I did not want to do on camera because within the frame, it's going to appear much more dramatic than if I was in person. Yeah, so to continue on here, we're talking about how people are framed today, and I mentioned mobile cameras and videographers, but a second way is by the robotic camera, remote-controlled cameras in a studio that are being controlled by a person sitting behind a switcher in a whole other room in the control room. So you have more automation today, more robotic video recording, yeah. Another way that you are framed as talent is through the field of view. The field of view refers to the kind of camera shot that we put on people and objects, and there are three general ones. There's the long shot, referred to as LS when you're writing a TV script, and that is a shot that has from the top of a person's head to the bottom of their feet. We have a lot of long shots when we want to show the entire crew for a newscast. We want to show the weather person, we want to show the two anchors, we want to show the sport. We do a long shot with all of them. Very common long shot. Another shot is the medium shot. That's where you're getting from the waist up. You have that a lot of times for anchors. And then you have a close-up. Now, the shot on this camera right now would be considered to be it would be either considered to be a medium close-up or a close-up medium shot. It's in between. You don't have all the way down to my waist, but you have part of my chest. So there are ways that you can deviate from these three standard fields of view, but generally speaking, those are the three that are thought about when the director is back in that control room calling the shots. Next up is the rule of thirds. This rule of thirds is borrowed from photography, actually. It's the idea of dividing up your camera screen into like a tic-tac-toe board where you've got two lines going this way, two lines going this way, and it divides things into thirds. Divides thirds that way, that way, that way. And where the 4 points are where the lines intersect, 1, 2, 3, 4, when you draw the line of thirds, those are called crash points. And normally you're trying to place objects that are in the frame. You're trying to place them at those crash points, makes them more noticeable, makes the frame appear more balanced. Now let's talk about what you can do as talent to stay in the frame when you are being broadcast, when you're being captured for video. Well, the first thing that you can do is use your monitor, and that is to say, as you are delivering copy, whether you are an actor or a newscaster or some other kind of broadcaster, you will have a TV monitor that's right next to the camera that's shooting that you can sneak a glance at. But you have to be very careful because it becomes very irritating. It becomes very irritating to keep looking off camera, so you have to sneak those glances in, and actually you have to have peripheral vision. Peripheral vision is that vision that's outside of your direct vision. You won't know it right now, but I am actually seeing off to the right the mini refrigerator that I have up here in this attic room. I'm seeing it even though I'm not looking at it because I have peripheral vision. Yeah, there it is. Okay? Just like your dorm fridge, just like your apartment fridge. Peripheral vision is something that you have to use not just for your monitor when you're talent in video production. You have to use it also to keep your eye on, sort of, because it's peripheral vision, the floor manager, the person who's going to be cueing you. We'll say more about that in a moment. Another way that you can position yourself on the frame is by cheating the frame. Cheating the frame is where you turn slightly at an angle to the frame. It's mostly done by people who are on the outside margins of the frame, the left and the right side of the frame. It's a way of inviting the audience to perceive an illusion of depth. And so by me turning this way, right, now this door behind me becomes more in play in the camera frame because your eyes are being drawn past my body because of the way that it's positioned past that camera frame, which is, it's different if I am facing the video square on, and I'm not cheating the camera now, and there's more of a two-dimensionality, more of a flatness to this frame just by virtue of how I'm positioning my body. So that's another way that you can add to the frame and position yourself in the frame. Another way is to keep rolling. Now, something else you should be expected to do is don't always perform only when the the floor manager cues you and tells you that you need to start delivering your lines, because a lot of times the producer of the show and the director are going to use video of you which is outside of those lines that you're speaking. They may want to have a static shot, for example, and so keeping rolling, keep in mind the cameras are always rolling, is something you need to keep in mind when you're trying to stay in the frame. Also, you want to try and stay in focus, and that means to not move your position around too much, and we're going to talk about when you do move your position around, how you can coordinate that. But again, every time you move forwards and backwards, in particular to the camera, you are changing the potential that the focus is going to go out of focus. Another item is to telescope your movement. And what that means is you give a hint that you're going to move when you're an anchor, when you're a sports broadcaster, when you're doing a documentary, when you're being interviewed in some cases. You don't just get up and move in TV. The camera person needs to know to follow you. So you telegraph that move. You say, let's bring in our expert all the way from New Mexico to talk about how jade is mined in the desert. Now I know, as a camera operator, I need to follow that talent. That talent is cueing me that they're going to go over and talk to somebody who's on the set, somebody from New Mexico. That's one way that you can telegraph your movements. Going along with that, a lot of times you will have your movements choreographed, and there will actually be marks on the floor that you have to, quote, hit. So that's our next item that we're talking about, is hitting your marks. Meteorologists have these marks. They have to go stand next to the chroma chroma key screen, the green screen, and then they also have to walk back across it when they're trying to follow a cold front that's moving in. So hitting your marks is something that's commonly done to help the camera people be able to follow you. Now, we've mentioned already one of the main positions involved in video production is a floor manager, and this takes place in the studio. This is not TV production that's taking place outside, although sometimes you can have floor directors outside, but floor managers, floor directors, it's the same position. That's the person who's in charge in the studio, and then you have a whole separate room that's a control room where the director is. We'll talk about that in another class. That's what we were supposed to see in our trip to Blue Ridge Communication, our field trip for this class. But the floor manager is a person in charge on the set where you have your anchors, you have whatever talent is going to be video recorded. And that floor manager develops a whole range of hand signals that they're able to use. This is to wrap it up. This is to cut immediately, not a single word. This is stretch it out. There's a bunch of hand signals. You can read about it in the book. Just know that the floor manager has this whole other style of communication. So that's one way that you can cue the talent and tell the talent that they need to start speaking. Another way that you can cue the talent is through what we refer to as IFB signals. It's an old holdover from what this used to be referred to. IFB stands for interruptible feedback. All it refers to is people who are producing television video or video for online streaming, and you have a team, is they have headpieces in. They have headsets. And they are listening to the director. They're listening to anybody else. Anybody else can comment. You're going to hear the director say, tilt that camera up, for example. And that's feedback that you're receiving. That means that also as talent, you're hearing that same feedback. So even though you're not supposed to do anything because it's a camera operator who's supposed to tilt, you know that is an issue. And you can position yourself in the frame to try and assist the camera operator. So you've got IFB feedback. Also, in terms of cueing, you've got tally lights on top of the cameras, or on-air lights, as you like to think of them. They're little red lights. When that light is on, your camera is live. We have the same thing in radio. We have an on-air light that comes on when the microphone is live in the studio. And then you've got a teleprompter. That's another method for cueing talent. A teleprompter, you'll see that almost every time that presidents give speeches of importance, because the words are so very important. You'll see that quite a bit with the coronavirus that's being reported on by the White House right now. The teleprompter is placed inside of the camera. There is a mirror that shows the words for the teleprompter that reflects them back up so that it looks like you're looking at the camera as talent, but you're really looking at a reflection of words in a mirror. Again, from the viewer's perspective, we want to see the anchor looking as in the eyes. We want to see the television person who's acting looking as in the eyes if their script calls for it. That's when we believe a person, and the teleprompter allows them to do that. Also in cueing, another way to help out the production team as talent is to mask your eye movement, Notice this when I give you one of your assignments for class participation today. When you take a look at anchors, notice that they often change their head just slightly. I'm doing it too dramatically here just to make sure you see it. Just a slight change of head will show you that they're changing thought patterns and processes, but it also means that your eyes are being drawn away from just looking at their eye movement. Because if they have a lot of eye movement, again, for all the reasons we've been talking about earlier, it distracts and makes them unbelievable. And it takes away from the message that they're trying to deliver. So they have to have eye movement, right? They have to look through their peripheral vision at the anchor, at the floor manager. They have to use their eyes to read a teleprompter. These are reasons for their eyes to move, but if their eyes were moving all the time, it would be problematic for the audience. So we try to reduce that movement. We try to mask that movement. And finally, you have cue cards. Yes, even today in the electronic age, we have methods of notifying the talent that something's going to happen, or we want them to ask a question, or we want them to sit back further or stand up straight. We can still use this. Just use the old good-fashioned method of the index card and the cue card. All right, so this will wrap up our brief video on working with video and recording. And now you're going to be expending your efforts on applying some of the concepts that we've studied, as well as other concepts in the book that I was not able to cover in some of the material that I give you in the email tonight. Have a great day.